Welcome back to another episode of the Girls Talk Money podcast. We are so excited to be back with this week's episode topic. This week, we are completely breaking down our career history. We named this episode Two Girls with College Degrees Who Don't Use Their College Degrees because we wanted to give you guys a little bit of a backstory into, what we studied, our career history, and where we are today and why we evidently don't use our college degrees. So we will be breaking all of that down in today's episode. But first, let's do a weekly recap. Grace, what is going on in your week?
We were just talking about this before we came on, but some people will probably relate to this when I'm like a go, go, go kind of person, right? And the past 2 weeks have been so insanely busy. I don't know what has been in the air. I was drowning. And then all of a sudden this week, it's like silent. And it is suspiciously calm. I'm like, why is there not like a ton of stuff going on? Yesterday I was done all of my work by like 1 o'clock. And I was like, what do I do? What do I do now? And even today, I had some videos to film for a client and podcast filming. And one little small thing I want to do after this, just like checking some emails and whatnot. And then I'm done. And it feels so weird to me. I don't know. It's kind of good though, because I know you did a video about this talking about daylight savings kind of kicking your butt. And I feel the same way. It gets so dark so early that I don't know, I just feel like my day's over by that point. Like it's 5 o'clock. I'm like, all right, time for bed, and I feel like I can't do as much after work, which is usually when I don't know, I love to go on walks or read or things like that. And I feel like my motivation for all of that lately has just been down the drain, which is not good.
Mine has too. It is such a double-edged sword when you're working for yourself because obviously you hate to be so busy that you're working like 50, 55 hours a week. And there have been some weeks because you and I talk all the time, I know you've had some weeks like that. But then on the flip side, if you're having weeks that aren't super busy, it's good. But then you kind of start to freak out a little bit. Like, what am I doing? Do I not have any work? Is the work slowing down? I know I get like that too. If I don't have something to do, I freak myself out and I try to create
Mhm.
more tasks for myself unnecessarily
Yep.
because you don't want to feel like the work is slowing down.
Yeah, I track all my income meticulously and like for my, personal and business, and I looked at my income for the month. I looked at my tracker and I'm like, okay, like I see it. Like I know who all my clients are right now. I'm not forgetting anybody. So I know I'm doing all of the work they all need me to be doing. But again, something still feels suspiciously calm. And it's kind of weird. I usually used to just fill all that extra time with other tasks, but I'm trying to just take a break. I'm like, I've busted my booty for, 10 months of the year. I think I can take the last two to kind of chill and enjoy this less chaotic time of my life.
Yeah, I've been feeling that a little bit too. This week was still a little bit crazy for me, but definitely not as bad as the last 3 weeks. I think there's just a lot of deliverables for brands with like UGC content and all of the ads that they want to put out for the holidays. So I had a lot of things due in the last, I would say, 3 weeks, and things are starting to slow down. My next week, this morning before we filmed this podcast episode, I was doing my calendar for next week, and I'm having a really slow week next week too. And I made a hair appointment for one afternoon, and I texted one of my friends that lives in Pittsburgh that also works for herself, and we're going to go like work from a coffee shop one day for a couple of hours, which we probably won't get a ton of work done if we're doing it together, just being honest with ourselves. But I did that because I'm trying to again like enjoy the slow period after the last couple of crazy weeks. But it's not like super intuitive to be doing that.
Yeah, I have a friend that I'm the same way with. Well, we're always like, "Oh, let's like go get work done at a Starbucks," and then we end up talking the whole day. Where she's like, "Okay, here's what's going on in my business and my current goals," and I'll be like, "Okay, here's what's going on in my business," and we just end up talking the whole day. So I'm just like, "All right, I can't do it anymore. If I really have serious work I need to sit down and get done, I can't do it at a coffee shop."
Yeah, yeah, especially not with a friend. Yeah, for
No,
sure.
no, I'm a chatty Cathy. I'll just keep going all day.
Those conversations are so valuable though. Like when you and
They
I
are.
talk for hours during a workday sometimes, or like send
Yeah,
audio messages back and forth about whatever, anything and anything, they're still valuable. We still learn some
they are.
things.
They are.
Anything else going on in your week?
I don't know. I feel like I mean, oh gosh, the apartment hunt. How did I even forget about that? I finally made the decision to just I'm so ready to move out of my parents' house, and I've put it off for so long because I was building a business and I didn't quite know where I wanted to move. And so, you know, packing up my whole life and trying to plant roots somewhere else amidst trying to build a business and not even being confident if that's the place I want to move to, it just didn't seem like the right choice. And now I've finally gotten to a point where I'm like, all right, my dad is retiring the end of this year, and that means he's going to be home all day, every day. And I love him dearly, but I don't have like an office space. If you're watching the video version of this, you can see it's in my living room. So I don't want to capitalize on this space and own the whole thing all day. And then my poor retired dad is just like confined to the living room or to the dining room, I mean, or to being outside in the cold winter. So I don't know. I'm ready to have my own space, but the apartment hunt has just been crazy. I live in Massachusetts, for anyone who doesn't know. I don't live close to the city, to Boston. I live probably like an hour away, but I looked into moving closer and oh my god, like the apartments were $2,600 a month for a one bedroom that's set up so weirdly too. Like not even like a good layout with good amenities, like no. Super weird layout. There was one apartment that I looked at last weekend where I don't even know how you would fit a bed in the bedroom. I can't even explain the shape of the room. It was so peculiar. I was like, "Where would my bed go?" And I have a full-size bed. It's not like I've got like a California, king bed or something, but I don't know. It's tough, I think, to find something that feels like it's good value and also just like this is a whole thing of like, oh, if you're closer to the city then you have to pay more, but then I'm like, okay, am I going to go into the city often enough where it makes sense for me to be close? So I'm honestly at a point where I'm just like, you know what, I'll just live in a small town. Just give me an apartment that's cute in a small town that's cheap, and I will continue to make the commute into the city for the few times that I decide to go during the year. I did find one apartment in Providence, Rhode Island that I really like, and it's not crazy priced. So I'm gonna go hopefully look at it if the management gets back to me. But I'm hopeful. It has like beautiful floor to ceiling windows, which is like my dream, and like a gorgeous kitchen, lots of space. So I don't know, fingers crossed, but I used to be like, "Oh, why do people not wanna move very often? Like, don't they wanna get a nicer apartment?" Or no, I get it because this process sucks, and I wouldn't wanna do it every year, that's for sure. Like, if I find somewhere I like, I will stay there for a couple years.
I think it's such a good idea for you to like not prioritize the location as much as prioritizing the space because you do work from home and you need
Mm,
a productive space and a big enough space to be able to run your business, create
yes.
content, just have like a good space. And like you said, how many times are you actually going to go into the city of Boston a month? That's
That's
what
the
you and I were saying the
thing.
other day. Like I live outside of Pittsburgh. It's not far outside of Pittsburgh. It's a very, very easy drive or Uber into the city. But I go into the city maybe 3 times a month, if that, and that's all I need to do. I'm not
Yeah.
like sad or I don't feel like I'm missing out on being in the city any more than that. But the other 27 days of the month, I'm significantly enjoying my life more.
That's the thing, I feel like because I work from home and I'm home so much of the time, it really does matter how my space feels and how it looks, right? I want it to be a space that I want to film, I want it to have good natural light, all those things are so important as opposed to maybe somebody who works out of the house 5 days a week. But it's tough because those apartments that have nice natural light and good amenities and all that are so expensive. It's so hard to justify spending $2,500 a month on an apartment. I don't know. It's a tough choice. It really is.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm excited to hear some updates. We have an episode coming
Thanks.
up all about the cost of moving in your 20s, so we will be talking all about it in that episode.
Yes, we will. What's been going on in your life, Erin? How has your week been?
I have a couple things listed here as well. Over the weekend, I went away for a little weekend trip with my boyfriend and some of his college friends, which I've never met any of them. So he was really the only one that I knew. And it was so nice. We went to this place, it's called Deep Creek. It's 2 hours south of Pittsburgh. And in the summer, it's a big boating spot, it's a big lake. And in the winter, it's a big ski resort or ski slopes or whatever. I don't ski, but and it wasn't cold enough to ski anyway, so no one did. But we were just in the house the whole weekend. On Saturday, we went to WVU to tailgate for a football game. It was just so nice to not be able to be on my phone or computer the entire weekend. I did come back on Sunday and was kind of like freaking out, feeling like I didn't miss anything. It's all in
Yeah.
my head. But it was just so nice to not be like on my phone and my computer for an entire weekend. And everyone was so nice. We had such a good time. So I did that over the weekend. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention was I feel like I'm in my like Sam's Club era. I had this in the know, and Grace was laughing at me before the podcast started. But so I like used to go to Sam's Club all the time, right? And I know everyone talks about Costco, but I've always been a Sam's Club girl. My parents were growing up. And for some reason, I stopped going. I haven't been in there for the past 2 years, but Sam's Club is actually a client of mine over the past month. I was filming some UGC videos for them. They had some holiday ads and things coming up. And for anyone that doesn't know, UGC stands for user generated content, when brands will hire creators to essentially create ads for them, and you send them to the brand and they run them as paid ads on their end, so they don't get posted to your page. But I do a lot of UGC content for some brands, and Sam's Club was one of them. So with that, I like went into a Sam's Club, and I obviously had to film myself while I was in the Sam's Club, right? So I bring my tripod. It was like a Tuesday afternoon, midday, and I was like, there has to be no one in the Sam's Club right now, because obviously I had to pull my tripod out in the middle of Sam's Club, so I didn't want it to be busy. There were so many people at the Sam's Club at like on a Tuesday at 2 p.m. And I was so embarrassed to be in there with my tripod. But I've been having to do that a lot recently. Like a lot of UGC videos and stuff, they will be in person. They'll be like, okay, go to this store in your area and like film X, Y, and Z. So I'm getting over it. I was really embarrassed at the beginning to have my tripod out in public, but we're getting through it.
You are so brave, because I would do that and then I would go in my car and I would just sit in embarrassment and like
Yeah.
cry. Like I get so embarrassed so easily. Oh my
Yeah.
God. But honestly, I feel like it's kind of like exposure therapy, right? After the first few times, you're like, you know what of it? Like,
Yeah. You
yeah, I
have to
got my
just get over
tripod at the
it.
Sam's Club, but I'm making money. Okay.
I
I
didn't
love
care
that
like
for you.
I didn't care like 90% of the time, but I did have to get this one shot of me walking into Sam's Club. And I wanted one of my friends to go with me because I wanted them to just like pull out their phone, but the
Yeah.
video was due. It had such a quick turnaround time. Like I had to do it that day, and no one was available in the middle of the workday, obviously. I was gonna like pay my friend to go with me. I wanted her to go so bad, but I had to get the shot of me walking into Sam's Club, and no one else was allowed to be in the shot. Obviously, it's like an advertisement, so you're not allowed
Yeah.
to get other people in the background for the most part of these videos. So I had to pull my tripod out in the like Sam's Club is the same setup as Walmart, where you walk in the
Yeah, like
one
right in the
door and
doorway.
then get the carts and then walk in the other door. I'm literally sitting in there with my tripod standing up, and so many people are walking in, so I had to stand there and wait for them to all walk past
Oh my,
to be able to get this one shot. So I was like
oh my
so
God.
embarrassed, but it's okay.
Yeah. I love this for you though. You know what I mean? You're out here making
Yeah.
money, and I mean, again, you're braver than I. You are braver than I.
You could do it. You could do it. I did it at Sam's Club. I was doing it at Aldi the other day it's a whole big thing, but it's
Gotta do what you
good.
gotta do out here.
We're out here hustling. But that is all I have for my weekly recap. I guess that kind of transitions nicely into the topic at hand for this episode. Again, we called this episode Two Girls with College Degrees Who Don't Use Their College Degrees. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about our career history, how we ended up where we are, and why we are not using our college degrees, how and like why we feel like we still got a good ROI on our college degree, even though we're not using it at all. And then we can give some tips at the end for how you can market your skills outside of your typical career path post college. So, Grace, why don't you get us started? What did you study in college and why?
Yeah, I'll kick us off. It's a little story here. So, my entire life I've always been really passionate about serving people. And when I was 18, the only experience I had with serving people was through organizations like student council and that type of stuff. So, I had done a ton of service work and I was so, so, so passionate about it. So my mind immediately was like, okay, I'll work in a nonprofit and that will allow me to serve people all the time. So I wanted to eventually get a master's in nonprofit management. So when I went looking for colleges, I just, I wasn't sure what I was going to do in undergrad. I knew what I wanted to do as a master's, but the undergrad degree didn't matter as much in terms of what I majored in. So when I did all the tours, I just went to schools that had a lot of different majors, which were usually just public institutions because I knew, if I go to a small school and then they don't have a major that I want, once I'm enrolled there, I'm going to be kind of screwed. So let me just pick a big school with a bunch of majors and there has to be at least one thing that I'll like. So I ended up not really liking the majority of the schools that I toured and applied to. And at the very last second, I decided to go to UConn, which is the University of Connecticut. And I am from Massachusetts, which is an out of state school. So that means out of state tuition. And I didn't have any scholarship, which looking back is so crazy. I don't know why I just decided to go to an out of state school with no scholarship. I don't think I really understood the cost of the degree, like how much it really was going to cost me. I did have a random scholarship that they just like added on after my first semester. And when I asked them about it, they said they had no idea where it came from. So I said, okay. So I'm not going to question that. I was like, what is this $8,000? They were like, we don't know what that is and where it came from. I was like,
Yeah,
use it
just
to
don't
live.
ask.
Yep. I was like, thank you very much. Have a good day. Never brought it up again. But when I got there, I had come in as a business management major because the business school at UConn was really hard to get into. And I figured, okay, if I can apply into it and get in, then I'll be good. But once you're at UConn and enrolled, it's a little bit harder to switch into the business school because it's already so full. So went in as business management major, thinking I'll do undergrad in that, then do nonprofit management as a master's. And my first semester of school, I took microeconomics. It was horrible. Looking back now, like it would click now, but my 18-year-old brain, it did not click. I literally was going to office hours all the time. I didn't understand. I just could not pick it up to the point where when I handed my final in, the professor, he knew me at that point because I'd been going to office hours every week. He was like, "How do you think you did?" And I was like, "I'm so sorry." I was like, please note that this is not a reflection of your teaching. I literally said that to him and I left. I earned a C in the class. He gave me an A. Fun fact. It was crazy. Yeah. Cause he was like, this poor girl, she's tried
She
real
tried.
hard.
She
Yeah,
tried
she
really
tried.
hard.
She gave her best effort and her best was C level. So after that, I was like, okay, this is not for me. I don't want to have to do this. I don't want to do any more economics. I don't want to do accounting. So I decided to switch to urban studies, which I thought was going to be more of the serving people, community aspect, but it ended up being more about, how cities were built and, urban environments in terms of like greenery and roads and that kind of thing, which was helpful to know. And we did talk about certain, inequities and things like that in different communities, but it wasn't giving me the level of understanding on people that I wanted and on social issues. So I decided to declare a double major in human rights. And I think this was about 2 years into school, maybe even 2.5 years. So it was kind of a late addition, but I did end up having a lot of overlap in my classes. So it wasn't like I had to stay past my 4 years to finish it. And I loved learning about human rights. I thought it was incredible and I genuinely enjoyed my classes. But I also felt like I wasn't getting, nothing that I was learning in my classes. None of it was something that I couldn't learn outside of a college environment, right? Everything I was learning could be Googled, and I knew that. So I decided, I want to try to maximize the ROI of what I'm getting on this degree. So I declared a minor on top of this. So I had two majors and a minor, and I minored in social justice organizing. I thought it was going to be a real cohesive program. I was the first student to graduate with this minor, and there were like four different departments in charge of it. So I had to hunt somebody down. It took me a year and a half to hunt somebody down to oversee me for the internship I needed to do to graduate with the minor. So it ended up being a mess, right? I thought here I am making this decision, adding something onto my plate to get a higher ROI on my experience. And it was a mess. But I did get a lot of cool internship experiences from that because so many internships were required with this, between the two majors and the minor. And I thought, I wanted to work in a nonprofit, but after I did some research with a professor in a nonprofit, I realized that space wasn't for me. I didn't want to be confined in an office all day, and that was what a lot of them looked like that I went into. So I pivoted later in my college career and I said, okay, I'm going to be a human rights lawyer. And that felt really good to me. I did an internship with the Connecticut Judicial Branch and I learned a lot there. But I also learned that the majority of what lawyers do is sit and read papers all day. And then they get to stand up in the courtroom and advocate for their client a very small percentage of the time. And that was what interested me. I wanted to help people get the justice they deserved. I wanted to impact people's lives. I wanted to change the way that they thought or, just give them access to different things they didn't have access to before. And I also wanted more freedom in my career. And I realized at that point that everything I had done up until that point was focused on human rights and social justice, but that career was not gonna give me the actual lifestyle that I wanted, and so that was when I decided to graduate and switch over to doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah, that's I feel like so many post grads find themselves in that situation where all of a sudden they're 3 to 4 years into school. It's way too late to switch your major. You know you're going to come out of college with a ton of debt, and you're like, I don't want to work in my career field. And that's
Yep.
such a scary and sad position to be in. But I love that you were like, okay, I made this decision and I'm going to take my career into my own hands, do what I need to do, which was move back in with your parents. And a lot of kids post grad like wouldn't feel comfortable doing that, which was definitely the step that you needed to do to be able to pursue and like pivot and do all of those things. So yeah, that's really sad. I feel like a lot of students are in that boat because you're thrown into college at 18 years old and they say pick a major, and then all of a sudden you graduate with that major and you feel like you're kind of stuck doing whatever it is you decide you want to do.
Right, and I think, I had a lot of friends that were undecided when they entered school, so it's like, "Okay, cool, you have time to figure it out," but at some point throughout those 4 years, you gotta pick a major, you have to pick something, and I think I was lucky that I was able to add on that extra major and that I had enough time in my schedule to take the classes I needed to, but I still didn't graduate with, despite having 2 majors and a minor, I still didn't graduate with a degree that is now really serving me per se.
Yeah, that was my biggest fear. I feel like we were a little bit different, kind of like starting out into college. I think I was going into college, like really trying to think about my post grad life, like kind of to a fault. So I was like totally the opposite as you because I loved economics. I took my microeconomics class and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I want to be an economics major, right? So
Oh my god.
I apply to all of the universities that I applied for as an economics major. And when I decided, I went to a small private university in like the suburbs of Pittsburgh. And when I got into that school and decided that that's the university that I wanted to go to. I, again, was an economics major, but before my first semester started, I actually switched my major from economics to actuarial science, which is a mathematics major, but it's a lot of like prob and stats. And I was like decent at math growing up, but I didn't love it. So the fact that I switched from an economics to an actuarial science major didn't really make any sense. But the reason why I did it was because I was afraid. So economics is a business degree at a lot of schools. And I was afraid to come into college as a business major because it's not very straightforward what your career path is going to be when you graduate. If you study actuarial science, you become an actuary. If you study nursing, you become a nurse. Engineering, you become an engineer. Whereas with a business major, it's not like that. You can study economics, but I'm not going to be an economist.
Yeah.
So I that kind of freaked me out, and I ended up switching to actuarial science because I kind of recognized how much money I was going to be spending on school, and I was afraid that I was going to graduate and not end up having a job. However, first semester of school, I was taking my actuarial science classes. Like I was in calculus and then I think a prob and stats class. And I was like, this is terrible. I hate every second of this. All of the people around me were so much better than I was. I switched back to being an economics major. And after I switched back into the business school, I had a different advisor. And he said, why don't you double major in finance? Because your job prospects as a finance major are probably a lot greater than as an economics major, and it's relative not too many extra classes to do both. So I ended up double majoring in finance and economics, and that's kind of I also got my MBA. I stayed my fourth year and ended up getting my MBA. It was like this I don't know. It wasn't a whole big thing because I was really just taking the time that I needed to figure out what I wanted to do when I graduated, but that's my college history is finance, economics, MBA.
I know people at UConn that were actuarial science majors that also just hated it like the entire time. I know that about actuarial science and accounting. Those were the two majors in the business school that people were like take me out. Like they were like, I want to drop out. And I enjoyed math. Like I took AP Calc in high school, and even though I wasn't great at it, I enjoyed math.
Mhm.
Like that. I was good at math other than AP Calc, but AP Calc is
Yeah.
another story. But I liked it, but I could never do it all the time. And I think that's also a good like reminder too about what you learn in the classroom and what you study in school is not the actuality of what that role is going to look like in your day to day. It's very different. Like being a human rights major and then being a lawyer are really different, or working in a nonprofit. You're still going to have to learn a bunch of skills that are just different than, you know, what you actually learned in the classroom.
Definitely. So moving forward from that, talk a little bit about, so you decided you didn't want to pursue what you majored and you graduate from college, you move back in with your parents. How did you pick like marketing? That seems so random.
Yeah, I actually get asked this pretty often because it is quite a pivot. So, one thing I'll say is that when I was in college, so I guess even before that, I always had this feeling in my heart and in my soul that I wanted, like when I pictured my dream life, it was a life with a lot of freedom. I had choice over my day. It was a life where if I wanted to go work from some other location, I would be able to do that. I never dreamt of doing like real hands-on work like being a doctor or being in some sort of cubicle or leading big presentations in terms of like being in front of a corporate environment. Whenever I pictured my dream life, my dream career, it was something with a lot of freedom. So I don't know why I forced myself to pick a human rights career and being a lawyer, right? Because that's you're literally in an office all day and then you're literally in a courtroom with no windows anywhere. So very different. But I wanted freedom and I knew that. And so when I went to graduate, my initial plan was okay, I'm going to take a gap year. I'm going to take 1 year off and I'm going to travel full time for the year. And then I will go to law school. But I realized pretty much like right before I graduated, right after, right in that timeline, I was like, girl, you don't that's not a solution, you want a life, an entire career with freedom, not a year with freedom. That's very different. And I thought about if I would be happy for a long time working in law, and I knew the answer was no. So I kind of realized I just had to find something different. I had to find a solution. So I had downloaded this freelance gig work app called Pangea when I was in college during COVID, because I saw someone who had posted it on social media, and I had lost my job at the time during COVID because I worked at a daycare and obviously it closed with COVID. So I was like, you know what? I know I can get gig work on there. What if I try to find some freelance work and just kind of see what happens? And that's exactly what I did. I started doing freelance work on there, and marketing had always interested me, but I felt like I needed a degree for it or that I was not going to be good at it. But I realized you can Google the everything you need to know with marketing. It is all there. You do not need a degree. So when I first graduated, I was taking on those freelance gigs only on Pangea at the time, and I was doing that for 40 hours a week. And then 30 hours a week I was working Instacart grocery delivery. So I had 70 hours a week of work for months on end. It was insane, but my income wasn't guaranteed with freelancing, and I wanted to be making money. So that's why I did the Instacart, and I loved Instacart. I made so much money from it. It was just super popular in my area. So I want to say it was about 6 months in. So I started that in May. And then in September, so not 6 months, what's that? 4 months? I had enough freelance work that I was making a full time income and I stopped doing Instacart as much. I scaled back from my 70-hour weeks. But I think I kind of tried to reverse engineer my career in a way where it wasn't that I was like, "Oh, I love marketing. I'm gonna do marketing. How can I do that?" It was like, "What kind of life do I want to live? Okay, what do I need to make to live that life? What type of career, remote, in person, whatever, do I want?" And then thinking through what are the career options that can give me that lifestyle? And of those career options, what do I like? Because I realized through that entire process that I would enjoy advocating for people as a lawyer, but I was going to hate the lifestyle. I wasn't gonna like that I had to work in private law in order to make a decent living. I realized it wasn't gonna give me the life I wanted, and that was ultimately gonna lead me to be in this unhappy cycle. And I also saw marketing as something that I could teach myself the whole way through. There's tons of free courses, which is what I did in the beginning, and you don't need a degree for it. So I think that's kind of how I landed on marketing and kind of how it grew a little bit.
I really love the advice to reverse engineer your career, kind of starting with what you want your life to look like and working back to what field you can work in that will give you that. I do think that I tried to do that in college.
Mhm.
When I was having the debate of do I want to be an actuarial science major or do I want to go back to being a business major, I actually for a while thought that I wanted to go into nursing or some type of healthcare route, which is so the opposite of me. It's like not even funny. My mom, as soon as I said that, she was like, Erin, no, like literally, no, that's a terrible idea. And she actually said to me, she said, I could not see you putting scrubs on and going into a hospital and that being your lifestyle. She said, when
Mhm.
I picture you, and it's because I've said this my entire life. I said, I want to move to a big city. When I go into work every day, I want to work in a huge office where I'm wearing like a cute suit and heels and have like a cute like work tote bag. Like that was what I envisioned my life to be. And I quickly realized that that's not what I wanted my life to be because I graduated from college and my first job post grad was at a government agency. It was called the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, and it was a really prestigious program to get into. I thought that this was like, again, I feel like we talked about this on here before, like my dream job. I was going to be a bank examiner. It combined like the accounting stuff that I was learning with the risk management stuff that I did in my MBA program. So I thought that this was a really perfect fit for me. And I thought that I would be traveling a lot. There were so many pros to this career and I thought that it was the lifestyle that I wanted. I wanted to be traveling for work, being on a plane in like a suit and pointy-toed heels. And then I got there and I realized that I was getting up at 4:30 in the morning most days to either like go to the gym or get into work. And I would be in the office for like 9.5 hours. I had to put a suit on every single day with like the pointy-toed heels that I thought I was going to love. And that was fun for 1 week. And then after that 1 week, it's
Mhm.
terrible. So I think very quickly I realized that that wasn't the lifestyle for me and that I did want more of a work life balance and remote work was going to be what was going to give me that because all of my internships in college were remote because of COVID. Well, my last two internships in college were remote because of COVID. So I saw what the remote lifestyle could give me and I knew that that's what I wanted to pursue, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think that especially with COVID happening, obviously, I wouldn't wish upon us a global pandemic, but it did bring about a lot of conversation around remote work. And just, I think a lot of people got the taste of the flexibility that it brought. I think a lot of older generations for the longest time were like, this is how work is. We go in person, we dress up, we do whatever. And when the pandemic happened, I think Gen Z was like, but what if it's not? But what if we don't do work that way? What if we actually try to make it better? We've realized, okay, people enjoy working remote. Productivity has stayed the same at a lot of companies. Some companies were even more profitable during COVID. What if we do it remote? And I think a lot of companies now are hopping on that bandwagon, which thank the Lord, because I mean, I'm literally in a sweatshirt and a little cozy tank top, and I got my lounge pants and I have my slippers on. I work in my slippers every day, and I wouldn't want it any other way.
Yeah, I save so much money now that I don't have to be buying my suits and my pointy-toed heels anymore. But I will say I
Mhm.
am really thankful for that first job out of college because honestly, it propelled me into the personal finance space, like online
Mhm.
career that I evidently got into. We do have some points here that we want to touch on, like how we transitioned from our first job into what we're doing now. And obviously, you all know what I do now is online content creation and then freelance social media marketing, UGC content, all of the good stuff that all centers around content creation and social media. And how I got into that was actually during that first job out of college. I didn't start at that time, but I started thinking about it during that time. So again, I was hating my life at that first job. I was traveling 80% of the time, and we were staying in these hotels in the middle of nowhere. And I wasn't with any of my friends. There was nothing to do after work. So I would literally sit in my hotel room after work and just kind of like research things. Like that's all I had to do was to like be on my computer at nights while I was in this job. And I knew that this was something that I like couldn't see myself doing, and I was getting to a point where I was thinking through like if I have to do this for 10 years, I'm going to be so miserable. So I just started researching like ways to kind of like break that mold. I don't even want to use the term like break that mold, but like I knew I had student loans to pay off. I knew I had things that I wanted to accomplish in my financial life, and I was just trying to find ways to like increase my income, pay off my student loans faster, just put myself in a better position so that I didn't have to stay like in this career for a long time. So that's when I had the idea to, if you've been following me for a while, you might remember my handle used to be Money to Miles on social media, like Money to Miles. And that's because I started by posting personal finance and also credit card point content. And that actually started as an idea for a blog website. And during my time as like in my first job, I really wanted to be a blogger. So I was spending all of my free time like researching being a blogger and thought that that was going to be a way to like have this other source of income and increase my income and like learn a new skill and all of these things. So that's what I was doing in my nights. While I was working my first full-time job that I hated, was researching how to be a blogger. And even though I didn't end up pursuing the blog route, I went the social media route instead. I feel like I still learned so much during that time. And if it wasn't for that job, I probably wouldn't be here.
Damn, so, like, hating your job propelled you into something else.
Yeah, like it is a good propellant being like, I cannot see myself doing this for 10 years. So I got to figure something else out because I want that flexibility. I want to have another source of income. I want all of these like big life things. So how am I going to do that?
Yeah. I think I got lucky because I I think a lot of my friends enjoy their jobs, which is great because I a lot of people hate their jobs, but I think I got especially lucky because I've never had a job that I despised that really forced me to like, okay, I need to change this. I mean, I used to work at a shoe store at a DSW, and that was the most boring job I ever had in like high school and college because people aren't like hooligans in DSW. They don't like throw shit everywhere, and that means that there's like nothing to pick up. Like I would just walk up and down the aisles in the store. But when I graduated, I decided to start my marketing business, but I let time go before I started doing any sort of social media work, which is interesting because I was doing social media for clients. So I was kind of on social media a lot and learning from that. But I had always wanted to create content ever since I was young. And a lot of people will probably relate to this, but do you remember the era of beauty gurus on YouTube? That was my shit. And I wanted nothing more than to be a little beauty guru on YouTube. And so I decided to finally pull the trigger on creating content in January of 2022. But I was posting like videos very sparingly and I had no strategy. I was just posting random stuff, but I didn't actually and then I took a break. I didn't post for months and then decided to start posting consistently in probably around July of 2022, so a little over a year ago, and I had no idea what I was doing with it. I was just kind of pursuing a dream, but my business was the main thing at that point. It still is my main source of income. But I'm glad I mean, it's tough, I feel like, when you're in a job you hate, but it can be a good propellant. I think it took me time to muster up the courage to start it because I didn't really have anything forcing me to start it. I wasn't trying to find an escape from anything. I just was like, go after your dreams, girl. Post that video, you know?
That's so funny that you wanted to be a beauty YouTuber because I feel like I've always wanted to be a blogger, and Money Smiles is
Yeah.
supposed to be a blog website. I feel like I've always wanted to be a blogger in college. Freshman year of college, I was trying to build this like lifestyle blog site. I feel like that was really popular in 2017, 2018.
Mhm.
Influencers would have blog websites and maybe be on like Instagram or something like that. So I wanted to do that. And then I ended up studying abroad second semester sophomore year. And when I came back, I tried to create a website, like a travel blog website, which was so stupid because I was already back from my semester abroad. I wasn't traveling at the time. So that made no sense. But I feel like I gained some like website design skills, maybe. I don't know. So I always wanted to be
Yeah.
a blogger. That's really interesting. But the next question that we have here is, do you feel like you got a good ROI on your college degree, and why?
I feel like this is a bit of a controversial kind of opinion. Maybe not controversial, maybe just an opinionated opinion, but I do think that UConn is overpriced. And I think that impacts my feeling on whether or not I got an ROI. I do believe I've gotten a solid return on my investment there. However, I feel like a lot of the return that I've gained has come from the things that I did myself, if that makes sense. So, my classes, I think they probably could have been very similar, taught me the same things at another institution. I will say my human rights major, which is where I felt like I learned the most at UConn of my majors and minor, the human rights major is not available at any public institution in Massachusetts. So I got a slight discount at UConn because of that. It's in the regional tuition program. But, so it's not like I could have gone somewhere and gotten the same education cheaper per se. However, I do feel like I could have gone to an in-state university and paid a lot less and gotten a very, very similar education. I think a lot of the value I got at UConn came from the people that I met, and I don't even keep in touch with a lot of people from college. I'm only close with a few people from school, but mostly from my jobs and my internships. I was always someone who was involved in tons of extracurriculars. I had multiple jobs at all times throughout college, and that's where I gained the most transferable skills. And so when I think about the ROI on my degree, I think I used to think of it as, am I getting an ROI on like the classroom learning? And the answer was no. I don't think that the money I spent on that. And for reference, I graduated with $70,000 of student loan debt. The rest we paid for in different ways throughout my college, but 70 grand in student loan debt is significant. And I don't think my classroom education was worth that per se. But when I think of it as, did I get an ROI on the 4 years that I spent in time there? Yes. I do feel like those 4 years of my life altogether were worth $70,000 in student loan debt. Um, but again, I think it comes really just from the internship experience I had and the jobs I had and what I learned there, or the things I taught myself too. The different conferences I went to, because I was always hustling through college, always.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip for anyone still in college. I don't know if anyone in our target audience is still in college, but if you are still in college, I think that's a really good lesson that you kind of need to create your own value no matter what institution you're going to. I think we're seeing a lot right now on social media about post grads graduating from college and not being able to find a job. And we know the job market's tough right now. We're totally not here to say that that's not true. There's a lot of stats out there saying that it's true, that college is getting so much more expensive and the wages for post grads are going down significantly. However, I think it's really important for people to remember that your college degree doesn't guarantee you a job when you graduate. Just because you have that piece of paper doesn't guarantee that you are entitled to a entry level position, which is really sad because we're kind of taught that that's how it is. We are taught that if you go to college, then you get a good job and you work up the corporate ladder and that's how your life kind of pans out. But unfortunately, college is becoming so I don't want to use the term mainstream, but it's becoming so normalized to go to college that sort of everyone has a bachelor's degree now. So you kind of do need to create that value within yourself while you are at college to be able to either get a good traditional job when you graduate or just like use that time wisely to decide what you do want to do to earn money when you graduate.
I think when I was going into college too, there was a lot of conversation around how where you go is really important. And I realized throughout college that it is not. And when I graduated, or actually, I think it was right in my senior year, I was actually helping recruit for a company. So I was looking at tons and tons of resumes. And I will tell you, and other recruiters will probably tell you the same thing, that yes, like where you go has some sort of impact, right? If you go to Harvard, it's like it's immediate, like, ooh, okay, Harvard. But if you went to Harvard and then the rest of your resume is literally empty, okay, great. There's thousands of other Harvard students that's resume has Harvard and a bunch of extracurriculars on it and a bunch of projects and awards and whatever. So using that time wisely is so important wherever you go though. If I had gone to an in-state institution that was much cheaper and had the same extracurriculars, I think my resume would have been looked at pretty much the same. Like I don't think my school had that much of an impact. And I think once I went through school and now that I've graduated, I've realized that the name of the institution does not matter as much as I thought it would before.
Yeah, 100%. I think what matters for the prestige of your university is more so about the network and helping you get that first full-time job or that
Mhm.
first internship, like really getting your foot out the door, I want to say. So, for example, my college was very close to the city of Pittsburgh. And because of that, a lot of our career fairs and things like that, all of the big employers in Pittsburgh would go to those career fairs. Whereas some of the colleges that I was applying for, they were farther away from the city. They were closer to my hometown or an hour and a half outside of Pittsburgh, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And even though my classroom education might have been the same at those career fairs and other types of events, those employers probably wouldn't have been there. So I would have less exposure that way. So I would say your network definitely matters, but totally agree with you. Like, no one's looking at my resume being like, RMU, I've never heard of that.
Yeah. I think it's just I think maybe in the past and like our parents' generation, maybe it mattered more, but I think that it just I don't know, I don't it's especially being an entrepreneur now too, literally nobody cares. Nobody cares where I went to school unless they went to the same school and they're like, "Oh, cool, I see you're also a UConn grad. Awesome." No one cares what my GPA is. Nobody gives a hoot about that. They're looking at my experience and what I've chosen to do throughout my degree and after, which is
Mhm.
just way, way more important. But Erin, do you think that you got an ROI on your degree?
I do, just because, like I said, I was very conscious about the money aspect of college before going into it. So I decided to go to the school that gave me the absolute best financial aid package possible. I think I applied to 8 to 10 schools, and this was the one that was going to end up being the absolute cheapest. Actually, that's a lie. The college very close to my house where I could have commuted. I probably could have gone for free, like just because I could have commuted. But I didn't want to do that. There was still a little bit of a balance there. But so I only ended up graduating with, I think, $38,000 worth of student loan debt. And I absolutely think that I got well beyond that in value. But again, not because of my college classes. Honestly, I did not learn anything in my college classes that even prepared me for like my first jobs out my traditional in my field jobs. Did not learn anything in my classes that prepared me for those. Do I think that I had really good professors? Yes. It's hard to teach students things that are actually going to be applicable in a corporate setting or in a job post college. It just is. But I think I got a ton of value from it, mainly because of my internship experience. And this is coming from someone that, again, doesn't even work in the field, but I'm realizing that I got a ton of life skills out of all of those experiences. And I think that this is a really important point for people who maybe I totally agree that college isn't for everyone. I think that you can come out of high school and start working immediately. Maybe if you want to be a business owner, start doing that immediately. However, I think that it's kind of important to have these like more traditional roles super early on in your career because you learn so many life skills like communication skills, presentation skills, how to be managed, how to be an employee is a skill that it's not super inherent to us. Small things like how to respond to emails and how to send emails appropriately. Just all little things that I think I learned a lot in my internships that kind of helped me where I am today, even though I'm not using my degree. I will say the most impactful internship experience that I had was an internship that I had sophomore year of college. Actually, I think it was junior year of college, but it was actually at a recruiting firm. And I know you mentioned you were doing some recruiting for a company. This was a specific recruiting firm. And at this firm, I was essentially a cold caller. And that gave me so much value. I worked for them for about a year. The confidence that I got, I learned like selling skills are something that I think everyone should probably learn at some point. I think that was a really good way that I got a good ROI on college, even though, like you said, my classes, we could probably learn anything that I learned in class on Google, but I still got a good
Yeah,
ROI.
I feel like especially in this like time now, a lot of things are just so accessible online. There are so many free courses, there are so many experts that are teaching people how to do things on social media, all of that. As you were talking, I thought of one thing that maybe will be reassuring to some people, but I get a lot of people who reach out to me, especially on LinkedIn, and they ask me how I became a freelancer or how I'm running my business or all these things. And they ask to get on a call with me. And I used to do these all the time just for free. I would hop on 15, 30-minute calls with a ton of people, and then it got to be too much. And I just don't really have capacity for it anymore. But when I started doing this, and I would get people who would say, "Can you look at my portfolio? Can you look at this, that, the other thing of all my materials?" I would realize that good communication skills, and the ability to take initiative and find solutions without someone holding your hand are not skills that a lot of people have. And I don't mean that in an offensive way, but hopefully some people who are listening to this will realize that you have those skills. And if you gain those skills from things like your internships or experiences you had in college, you've gained more than most people. You know, I would get people who would come onto calls, and this isn't, a shot at them, but they could not convey their value. I'm like, what value do you bring to a client? What are you doing? What are the deliverables that you're giving to them? Why is your work important? Why does the company need it? And they would have no response. Or they would miss multiple calls with me. They would book a call, and then they had no time managers calls. They say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot about this call. Can we book again?" And then they would literally miss the second call again. And those things are so, so important. Like, I genuinely think the communication and your initiative and ability to find a solution without someone holding your hand is far more important than the concrete skill. I had an employer in college when I was an RA who had said to me, "Oh, I always have the best staffs." And I was like, "Well, yeah, how do you ensure you always have the best staff?" Because I worked with them for 3 years, and or 2 years, and we had great staff both years. And they were like, "Because I hire people that are good people, that show that they have those transferable skills. I don't need somebody who knows all the finer details of how to do this job. I can teach you those things, but you need to be communicative. You need to be honest. You need to be trustworthy. You need to know how to take initiative. You need to know how to problem solve. Those are things that you need to know. You can learn the hard skills needed to be an RA, how to, run a duty shift, how to report an incident, how to write an incident report, like those types of things. You can learn those skills. And that statement has stuck with me so much throughout my career because that's one of the things that a lot of my clients value so much is if they ask me something and I don't know the answer, I say, "Oh, I don't know the answer. I'll find it for you and I'll get back to you later today." And I just go Google it and I find the answer for them, right? But so many people don't have that. But if you gained that from an internship experience or college or whatever, again, you've I feel like you've gotten an ROI because those are not widespread skills that people have.
Yes, totally agree with that. My most recent corporate job, I was working in internal audit, and it was a lot of soft skills. To be successful with that job, you need a lot of soft skills because you are communicating, presenting, all of those things are 80% of the job, and 20% of the job are the technical things that they can teach you once you get into the job.
Mhm.
So, yes, totally agree with all of that. Should we get into some listener questions? We're coming up on an hour
Yes.
here.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Let's take the. One sec. Okay, this is a fun one. What is one goal you have for 2024 that is not money related?
You're gonna have to go first in this one because I gotta think. I haven't even thought about my 2024 goals. I'm trying to get through 2023.
Yes. Okay. I have been thinking a little bit of my 2024 goals. This one is a little bit basic, but I want to prioritize travel significantly in 2024, and specifically I brought this up in a video the other day, specifically intentional travel. And what I mean by this is I'm tired of taking weekend trips with my friends and it literally just be like us going to the bars and drinking. Like I'm so tired of that. I'm tired of going to the same places, like the New Yorks, the Miamis, those trips are so fun. We have the good, like the best time. The Nashvilles of the world. We do have a really good time, but I want to just prioritize a little bit more intentional travel, really thinking through why I want to take a trip and what I want to get out of it before we ultimately take the trip. So hopefully that's a European trip this summer. I want it to be kind of a long trip, which I have not done in my entire adult life, really since studying abroad when I was 19. So that is in the works, but that is a big goal to evidently spend a lot more money on travel and prioritize it.
We always joke, for context to the listeners, we always joke that we share a brain cell and it hops back and forth between the two of us. And this is a perfect example because I was sitting here thinking, just for like, okay, what do I want to, what's my goal? And quite literally, I was like, it's travel. And then you're like, I want to travel. I was like, you know what? Come on now. Like,
I actually love that
there's
for us
just,
because Grace and I have talked before about like us needing to like travel more together. We were like, oh, we should go to like Bali and just do this big like business retreat and like film podcast episodes and like we have big dreams. So I love that that
yes.
was also your answer.
Yeah. I think I realized the other day I was actually writing a newsletter article for a client on credit card points and how to leverage them. And I was learning so much that I didn't even know. And I was like, oh my God, I have all these credit card points just sitting here. And again, daylight savings time's kicking my butt. I want some sunlight. I want to go somewhere warm. I should really be traveling more. And I think I just kind of put it on the back burner because I've been so focused on my business, which is it's a good thing, right? But with things being suspiciously calm, and I think that's probably how parts of 2024 are going to be, just the way I've set up my business now. I really want to take more time to travel and just see different places, but I also agree with doing it intentionally. One thing that I really want to do when I travel more is when I'm in areas where I can have a car, like rent a car and drive around to actually get a feel for what does the whole city feel like rather than going somewhere and just staying within the few blocks near my hotel or Airbnb. I think that's definitely one, but I do need to plan that more. You know, it takes more initiative to sit down and plan a trip, but I don't know. I really do. I need to get out. I need to get out of Massachusetts and go different places. The only time I traveled this year was really for work. Yeah, I literally think every single trip I've had this year has been work related, which is
Yeah.
crazy.
I want to do like a retreat. Like I want to do something kind of out of the ordinary, something that I'm going to come back feeling so fulfilled and
Mhm.
just it's the perfect mix of like relaxing but also stimulating my brain and like learning new things yeah, I want to do a retreat, I think. But we should do an entire episode on credit card points because this is a
Yeah,
question that we get asked a lot, and I again started my channel talking about credit card points. I feel like I know so much, but I don't utilize them to my fullest potential because I'm not really going anywhere right now. So it is something that I need to think through for 2024 as well. But I love that that was also your answer.
I agree. I think the next listener question is good for you to take because you are an investing genius. So, what is a brokerage account, Miss
Okay.
Erin?
I do really love this question, and it's something that I get asked a lot and it trips people up so much. And it makes me sad that it trips people up so much because it really is pretty simple. So, a brokerage account is just an umbrella term for an investing account. Like any account that allows you to place an investment is a brokerage account. Within brokerage accounts, there are retirement specific accounts. So things like 401k, IRA, like those are still brokerage account, but they are retirement investing accounts. And then there are non-retirement investing accounts, which are just regular brokerage accounts, like nothing fancy to them. There are less rules on how much money you can put into them, if you're eligible to put money into them and invest in them, less rules on when you can take your money out, make trades, like all of that stuff. It's just a regular non-retirement investing account. And again, it makes me sad that that trips people up because it's just a fancy term for no reason. But yeah, anyone can really open a brokerage account and start investing. So
Investing is full of fancy terms that trip people up. It's all confusing terms for no reason. The other day I was describing an index fund like a Spotify playlist because I'm like, that's literally what it is. I'm like, it's a little playlist of companies. That's all it is. But it really, I feel like it does get unnecessarily confusing. It's like taxes. It's like all sorts of weird things woven into the tax laws. For what? For why? That's how investing is.
yeah, they do make it challenging because they don't want people to know this information because investing is how you build wealth and build like long-term generational wealth. So they make it difficult on purpose, I will say.
We
Awesome.
love that.
Well, let's go on to the last question then. I think this is a good one for you. We touched on this a little bit in the episode, but how do you get started freelancing? If someone came to you and they asked that broad question, how would you answer?
Yeah, I get asked this all the time. And I always give these same kind of like straightforward answer. Get yourself onto freelance platforms like Pangea and Contra. And Upwork is okay, but I'd get yourself onto Upwork as well. And then also create a LinkedIn profile. Make sure that your headline on LinkedIn, which is like that little bit of text that comes up underneath your name on your profile, make sure that that is searchable. So if you want people to hire you as a content marketer, put content marketer in your little bio and make sure that you have your profile filled out with lots of descriptions of the work you've done in the past, where you've worked, what you did, the results you got, things like that. But also, when people reach out and ask me this question, I find that a lot of people already have this skill or they already know these things. They're like, okay, I know I should have a LinkedIn profile. I know I should have a profile on Contra or Pangea or Upwork, whatever. But what happens is you get stuck in analysis paralysis and you're like, I need to know everything under the sun before I can get started. No, you do not. I really had no idea what I was doing when I took on my first social media client and I Googled my way through everything. I literally would use time tracking software. I would track my time that it took me to work with this client. I would pause it when I needed to go like Google something and I would find the answer to it because it would usually be things that would take me a long time. I would go find the answer and then I would come back, restart my timer and work on it for this client. And that's how you learn. You're never going to have your first client experience until you get your first client. So you just have to get yourself out of that analysis paralysis and at some point take a jump. One thing that I learned this in therapy and it really helped me with making decisions. And it's to ask yourself, what is the best case scenario? What is the worst case scenario? And what is the most likely case scenario? So, whether you're debating starting freelancing or any other career option, what's the best case scenario? You start, it goes so well, you make multiple six figures freelancing, you love your life, yada, yada. Worst case scenario is you work with a client, you have no idea what you're doing, they realize, they fire you. Okay, great, that's really not that bad. You know what I mean? That's not that bad of a situation. And the most likely case scenario is that you start, you don't quite know everything. You have to figure it out as you go. Maybe there's a couple bumps in the road, but you eventually get your footing and become a really great freelancer, which is exactly what happened with me. So walk yourself through those options too if you're feeling you're stuck in analysis paralysis, because that helped kind of give me the push to just take the jump and start.
Those are such great tips. I also like to remind people about freelancing that you don't have to freelance everything. Like you can be something so specific, like I see on Fiverr all the time people who strictly take people's products and list them on Etsy for them. Or let me think about another example, someone who strictly manages a Pinterest account or like something so specific within the overall umbrella term of marketing. You don't need to know everything about marketing. If you have one very specific skill and you can get one client in that very specific skill, that builds up your portfolio in that one skill. And if you get multiple clients, even though you only have one skill, you can still make a good amount of money, close to a full-time income to even more than a full-time income.
Mhm. And you're not gonna know what you like, especially in the overall marketing umbrella. You're not really gonna know what you like and what you don't like until you get your feet wet in things. I thought that I wanted to be a full-time social media manager and only have social clients. And then I started and I had a full-time roster of social clients. And I was like, I hate my life because I'm spending 8 hours a day on social media. And then it makes, when I'm outside of work and I'm scrolling for personal purposes just to like have a break on my head, I'm only thinking about work because I spend my whole day on there. So just give something a try. The worst that happens is you don't like it and you tell the client you're letting them go. But the thing is that can happen with any side hustle or any job. You could start driving for Walmart and then be like, I hate being a delivery driver for Walmart. And you do the same thing. You quit, you let it go, you find something else. So treat it the same way. Don't put the pressure on yourself to know all the answers from the get go.
Yes, I love that. That is the last of our listener questions, and we're just at about time. So I think that brings us to the end of what episode is this now? This is
I don't
the
even know.
the sixth episode that we filmed.
I think
But
so.
yeah, episode 5 or 6 of the Girls Talk Money podcast. We are having so much fun filming these podcast episodes for you guys every Friday. They are released every Monday at 4:30 in the morning. So you can find new episodes every Monday. And as always, follow us on Instagram if you want to be involved in the community. Give us your feedback. We really want to hear some feedback on what you've been liking, but also what you've been disliking about the podcast. If you have any episode topic ideas for us as well, we would absolutely love to hear them. So give us a follow or send us an email over on Instagram. And yeah, we will see you guys next week.